Welcome, welcome, everyone. I see we have people from everywhere, from New York, from in England, where I am, from Georgia, Germany, all over. Welcome, welcome. We're just going to start in 1 minute.
I'm figuring Julia gave a lot of people the link because I see a lot of her name popping up everywhere.
Yeah, when you register, the link personalizes to your name, so I think that's what's happening. But if anyone is here who isn't Julia Mars and their name is popping up, you can rename yourselves so we can see who you are for when you post or have any questions. Okay, so for me, it's 6:05 here in London. So I'd like to welcome all of you to this event. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Because as you can see from the chat, we're hosting this session across multiple time zones. So welcome to Black and Cancer Week. My name is Ria, and I'm joined by my co-moderator, Mamadou. I'm gonna wave, Mamadou. And we are the co-directors of Mentorship and Outreach for Black and Cancer. And we do this in conjunction with Dr. Julia Morris, who was instrumental in organizing this event today. So we want to give a clap to her, as well as Janae Sweeney, Wayne Lawrence, and Tiara Griffin, who are our ambassadors. So we'd like to thank all of those of you who've been supporting Black and Cancer for the past year, as well as those who have recently joined us. And just a little bit about ourselves. I'm Ria, as I mentioned before, and I'm a PhD student here in London at Imperial College. I study colorectal cancer. I'm a cancer epidemiologist, so I do more data science side of things and not much in the lab. And I have been with Black and Cancer for about 8 months now. And Mamadou, if you want to say something about yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Mamadou. I am a second-year PhD student here at Weill Cornell in New York City. So currently I just actually joined my thesis lab at Sloan Kettering at Jed Volchok's lab. So we're looking at immune modulation of tumor microenvironment. Before that, I was in Philadelphia at the Wistar Institute doing vaccine research. And I have been a part of Black and Cancer for probably under 7 months or so. As part of the Director of Mentorship and Outreach. And I'm very, very excited. This is our second Black and Cancer Week, and I love seeing all the different places that people are coming from. So I'm very excited. This is gonna be an exciting week, and we hope you really enjoy the various events and talks that are going to be very enlightening and eye-opening. So having said that, last year, the Black and Cancer Initiative was really founded to recognize, engage, and celebrate Black physicians, researchers, survivors, and community advocates involved in the fight against cancer. And so this year's Black and Cancer Week is centered on the idea of empower. And that means empowering our Black physicians, our researchers, survivors, and community at large, and really highlighting the power in that representation, because representation really does matter. And we are excited to have a great set of talks lined up, and we hope you have you leave feeling empowered yourself. So before we proceed with today's event, we'd like to say a special thank you to some of our sponsors. We had Fred Hutchinson's Cancer Research Center in Seattle, and Roche, a biopharmaceutical company, which is at our $5,000 sponsorship level, as well as Damien Runyon, which is at our 1,000 level sponsorship. And so having said that, we'd like to welcome our panelists for today. We're excited to have them. We have Dr. Leanne Bailey and Dr. Henry Henderson, who will be our speakers for today. And so just a quick introduction. To get things going, Dr. Bailey is chief of the Integrated Network branch of the National Cancer Institute's Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities. And I would like to go on further, but she will introduce herself further. So welcome, Dr. Bailey, as well as Dr. Henderson, who is our very own. He's one of the co-founders of Black in Cancer. So shout out to him, and works in medical affairs as a hematology oncology medical science liaison. So welcome to Dr. Henderson as well. With that, I will pass it on to Rhea to start our panel discussions.
Thank you, Mamadou. So first of all, Mamadou gave the briefest of introductions because we wanted to introduce themselves, tell us what they do, what sector they work in, what other social work they do as well, to give a brief overview of how you got to where you are right now. So we can start with Dr. Bailey. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to participate in this panel. And I'm really excited to be able to not only get to know a little bit about you, but also to learn more about this organization. I quite happily was approached a couple of weeks ago, and since then have really been excited to become part of this organization. So my name is Leanne Bailey, and my title is the Chief of the Integrated Networks branch, which is just a fancy term for a supervisor and administrator in the federal government. I do represent the National Cancer Institute Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities, and our office focuses in on underrepresented and underserved populations, specifically through cultural competence, outreach, education, and prevention efforts. I wear a variety of hats and do quite a bit of work in the community with regard to providing that outreach. Again, COVID has transformed the way we do everything. So virtual health, telehealth, leveraging, I would say, medical records, as well as the folks who are in the community acting as liaisons. So a variety of different activities with that regard. And then my career journey to date, it's been somewhat of a twisted one. Started out finishing my degrees up at the University of Virginia, my MD and PhD. And prior to that, actually attended Millikan University, where I got my bachelor's degree and actually did a study abroad in Australia. I was really interested in the Aboriginal population because that's akin to many of the plights that the Native American population, American Indian, faces right now. And once I transitioned through that phase, I actually spent about 8 years in the public sector working for Deloitte as a consultant prior to rejoining NCI, where again, we support the center in not only education, but also outreach and cancer prevention, and really trying to train the next generation of investigators. So thanks again.
Excellent. Thank you so much across such a range of sectors. Thank you. And now we just ask Dr. Henderson to introduce himself.
Yeah, perfect. I'll keep it short because I want to go ahead and hop in. But hey, everyone, again, I'm Henry Henderson. I am one of the co-founders of Black in Cancer, along with Sigourney Bell, who's based in the UK. Just a little bit of background about me. I am a PhD by training, cancer biologist. I did my undergrad at Southern University in Baton Rouge, graduate school, both my master's and my PhD at Tuskegee. During my PhD, I studied a neural adhesion molecule and the progression of breast cancer. Following that, I did my postdoctoral work at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, where I looked at acquired resistance in patients who developed this resistance to tyrosine kinase inhibitors in non-small cell lung cancer. I can go on, but I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to talk and ready to get into the conversation.
All right, great. So I guess to add on to that, we understand that pursuing further education is really a tough thing, especially if you're going into grad school or med school or any professional school afterwards. But sort of, I guess the question is, what really, sort of motivated you to sort of continue on or further your education rather than just stopping, at a bachelor's level and getting a job and sort of going on from there?
Yeah, so I can dive in first. There were two key drivers. One I would say is my mother and my family. My mom has been an art teacher for about 30 years, and my parents, as well as my family, really understood that education was the key and the way forward. And my mother told me as many questions as I asked, I should be able to put that to good use. And so I can't tell you exactly what I want to be when I grow up, meaning that there is no right way, that your journey is just as important as the destination. But they were definitely big drivers in that. And the second is that I personally have been disproportionately affected by cancer in our family. And so after losing more than 12 family members to cancer, I really wanted to make a difference. Again, I'm a farm girl from Missouri, and not, in some instances, I would say, privy to some of the accessibility and the benefit that others have been gifted with. And so I really wanted to make a fundamental difference and give a voice to people who maybe didn't have one. So those are two of the biggest factors in me moving forward.
Thank you for that vulnerability. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go and kind of piggyback off Dr. Bailey. I think growing up, I was inquisitive in nature, so always asking questions. Originally, I didn't want to be a cancer biologist or anything. I wanted to be a wildlife biologist or a veterinarian. And I used to carry around this giant encyclopedia of animals. So I knew like the whole thing from like A to Z. So I was like, that was what I wanted to do. But it wasn't until I got to college and I did some training and some shadowing with some vets. I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And I did a small rotation in a cancer lab. And so just being in that cancer lab kind of shaped my mind of how interesting this disease is. And coming from a family who has like generational prostate cancer, all the way back to my great-great-grandfather, that was something that hit home for me. So having that personal tie, as well as being really, really interested in how this disease works and how cancer is literally smarter than everybody on this call, I think that alone kind of helped shape to where I am today. And so I knew in graduate school, I didn't want to continue to read research. So now I'm in medical affairs, kind of doing kind of like a consulting job, but it's not really. I'm a medical science liaison. So I just support the therapeutic area that my company provides.
That's excellent. Thank you both. Just to piggyback off of that, just to mention one thing to the audience, we're going to ask questions throughout. So if you want to pop anything in the chat based on what of our speakers have said, you can do that. But we also have time at the end that you can pose specific questions. But just piggybacking off of that, when you talked about, you weren't sure that you'd get into cancer, you were kind of in other areas, and then, personal experiences, something have driven you into that. Did you have any experience in the field of study before graduate or professional school? So did you do basic science and then thought, okay, maybe cancer, or did you have any experience in any lab where you thought, okay, this is what I wanted to be in? Or what do you think? Did you have any experience, or did you go in and then decided from there on after graduate school or professional school?
I can start. I'll tell you, I didn't. The only experience I had in a cancer lab was that summer before graduate school. And a lot of people don't notice about me, but I did my master's actually in goat breeding. So I was breeding goats and trying to figure out the specific goat for small farmers in rural Alabama. So that's what I did in my master's. But I knew I didn't like it. And so I kind of, on the side and at night and on the weekends, I kind of did a little thing in a cancer lab. And that kind of like shaped what I'm doing today. And so I literally had one summer in and I just saw the goat in the chat. I did one summer in a lab before my graduate studies, and I continue in that same lab throughout my graduate school, and then I continue on to my postdoc.
Yeah, and as for me, I did one summer through the NSF, National Science Foundation. There was just a summer research program, and I was in an organic chemistry lab. I wish I could have been working with goats, but that's where I started. And after that, during my senior year, I actually did the study abroad program in Adelaide, Australia. And that was really my realization that I really enjoyed translational research, being able to take the traditional medicines, applications, and then be able to trace that back to Western medicine. And I felt that was really empowering, and I was really excited. So I don't know if you'd necessarily call that research, but at that time, I thought it was just fabulous. And being a chemistry major, it was just everything, right? To be able to go back into the extractions and then knowing that it really was helpful, right, on the other end. So I decided then that I wasn't wanting to devote my life to a protein or a gene, right? That I was really interested in how everything fit together for the greater good.
Great. And this is actually perfect timing. Sorry if I butcher your name wrong, Adesiwa. Your question actually was the same question I had. As a recent, recently just starting graduate school, I'm really interested in sort of how did you come to the idea of, of choosing, having gone through academia, choosing either a government job or an industry? This is a common question that a lot of us have throughout grad school. Like, what happened? Did you always have an idea that you wanted to go into where you are right now, or did you decide that afterwards? Sort of your decision making process on that.
Yeah, I can start. I can tell you now, my morale going into graduate school was so high. I loved the lab, loved doing it. It was just, it was so amazing. My whole family thought I was curing cancer. It was a blast, right? But like going into fourth year, end of third year, I'm like, I don't think I actually like doing Western blocks at 8 o'clock at night when I want to be out. But I do like following the science. I do love following the research. So I love reading papers. I love keeping up with the new things that are coming out. I just hated being in the lab at the bench or under the hood when I wanted to be doing something else. And so from then I started to kind of do a lot of information interviews, researching other jobs outside of academia, where I could follow the science, still keep up with the research in my specific interests, but not touch a pipette. And so that kind of led me to where I am now, into my career in medical affairs. I'm following the science, I'm following trials, but I don't have to do one experiment, but I'm up to date on everything.
Yeah, and as for me, I really did enjoy graduate school and went on to basically begin my own lab at the National Institutes of Standard and Technology and Tissue Metrology. And I really did enjoy the work-life balance that it gave me. At the time, my priorities changed a little bit, but the thing that I didn't like was having to continuously write grants and having people be dependent upon me for their livelihood, for their next steps. So whether I was right or wrong, I found that that was a lot of pressure that I didn't particularly care for. And so I started to look for other things, again, intrigued, right, by the current developments and the science that was coming out, but really wanted to make a greater impact on a larger scale without having to personally be the driver for that. And so I chose the government ultimately because now I have a national platform, right? So being able to create programs, being able to support training, on a much larger scale. Again, I still don't know exactly where my career path will take me, but I can tell you what I don't want to do. And so that's the reason why I say embrace the journey and try a lot of different things while you have the opportunity, so that when you really find out what makes your passion just be evident, because then it's not work, right? It's something that you want to do. It's something that naturally you fit to. But if you're always trying to fit into somebody else's mold or fit into the traditional path, I don't think that you'll find that nearly as fulfilling. So don't be afraid to change courses, I guess what I would say.
I'm just going to go off script for 1 second, just in terms of Dr. Bailey. I know we had some talks before for the mentorship program, and a lot of undergraduates, they start out doing medicine or thinking, I'm going to be a doctor, I want to do medicine is it. And then they don't, and sometimes, they realize, okay, maybe medicine isn't for me, but they don't really know the other paths, whether it is to research or anything. So can I just ask you specifically, how did you make, after medical school, make that transition to go, just the first one to go, okay, maybe research is what I'd be interested in? Or was it your time in Australia, or what helped you in that?
Yeah, I think just, I always had questions, right? And so, with colleagues, with other experiences, I saw folks go into things like patent law. Like I never would have thought putting that together, right? Had another colleague that went into animation, anatomical animation. Again, why in the world? Like I never would have put those things together. No, seriously, but it was so perfect for them. And so for me, again, I realized that medicine was really a business. And so to be honest, I felt disenfranchised, right? I wanted to be able to spend more time, have a more holistic approach in patient encounters, and I wasn't able to do that. It was really about a reimbursement code, right? And then at the bench, I've already discussed those challenges. So something that would meet in the middle, right? Something that wasn't all or nothing, but would allow me that flexibility. And also with regard to mentorship, I'm sure you've all experienced it. I don't want to overgeneralize, but I didn't ever see anybody who looked like me, who talked like me, who had my background, who understood my, way of thinking and my drive, because it's not always about the publication. It's not always about the salary. It's not about the title. And so being able to try to stay true to who I was and be authentic in those environments is also extremely tiring, right? And so I really didn't have the wherewithal until there were a few people who really invested in me. And when I say in me, genuinely what I wanted to do, instead of saying, oh, but you'd be such a great, oh, you'd be an excellent PI. Well, but that's not me. And so I know that has to be a continual challenge for many of you. And so that's really where I reached my crossroads.
Yeah, I just kind of chime in. When Dr. Bailey says there'll be people who are for you. When I interviewed for my postdoc, the first thing my advisor asked me was, what do you want to do? And that was weird for me because every other postdoc I've interviewed for, they knew I was going into academia. But she literally asked me what I wanted to do. And I told her, well, I don't see myself being a professor. I don't see myself being a PI. She was like, well, that's great. Whenever you figure it out, we can work. And so from then on, we kind of just worked, and she connected me with people. She gave me contacts and gave me insight about the field that I'm in now. And so having people that are for you and that have your back, they're out there. You just gotta, just keep looking and keep networking and reaching out to people.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much for that transition, because we at Black in Cancer also believe that. And this year we launched our Black in Cancer mentorship program because we noticed the same thing. There's a lack of representation in academia, in industry of Black researchers in cancer. So we wanted to, highlight to undergraduate students that there are a range of careers. We have a whole set of mentors who have signed up to help guide them in their career paths, help them with applications, let them see what opportunities could be there for them. Because we noticed for each person, most people who are board members of Black in Cancer, we've all been able to identify mentors who've been able to guide us on the path that we are right now. So I think I agree with you. That's a very important thing. Just piggybacking off of that, I wonder if there were any specific organizations or things that you were involved with that you think helped you or mentored you in a way, and then how those helped you progress. We mentioned Black in Cancer mentorship program. We also know there's the STEMsational, which one of our ambassadors has started. There's also in the UK another group called BB STEM, but I just wonder if you had any experience with any that you could share with people joining tonight or this afternoon.
Yeah. I like that. Go ahead, Dr.
Go ahead, Dr. Henderson. No worries. Go ahead.
I think just two programs kind of stood out to me, like in my training. One, I did a summer internship at MD Anderson Cancer Center. It was the Cancer Prevention Training Program. And so after I passed my comps for my PhD, I kind of just took a summer off to go and do that. And that was one of the pivotal moments in my career that gave me tons of professional development and exposing me to many things you can do with the background in cancer. So that's number one. Number two, during my postdoc, I did a fellowship with the FDA and the AACR. It's the Oncology Educational Fellowship, and it kind of opened my eyes to regulatory affairs and oncology drug development outside of a lab. So what happens when we find something in lab? What happens then? How do we get it to the public? So being able to see that, through government as well as through nonprofits like the AACR, that kind of helped shape me where I am today, as well as starting Black in Cancer with Sigourney. I think we're a little over a year old now. So that in itself has been an entire experience.
Yeah, so I absolutely concur with searching out different organizations with, I think, different opportunities and experiences. So again, I think for basic research, the National Science Foundation has a lot, again, not cancer-centric, but really exposes a lot of different opportunities, right? Depending upon where you are, what institution you're at, so on and so forth. And so since I am at the NIH, there are so many training programs. Again, I'm happy to drop some links into the chat, but we support at the Center to Reduce Cancer Health Disparities what's called the Continuing Umbrella of Research Experiences. and recognizing that it's so important to engage folks at the earliest juncture of the pipeline, as in elementary, middle school, so on and so forth. We actually provide support for students from middle school all the way up until their first faculty appointment. And these are competitive, independent funding mechanisms, so you can take them with you wherever you go. So it's pre-doctoral, postdoctoral, after you get your PhD and you're writing for your R01, trying to get R21. And it's not just about the, the training, right? It's about, how do you write a grant? How do you craft specific aims? Who do you need to send it to? Again, in your field of research, finding collaborators. So I would encourage you to go and look at those opportunities. There's a National Research Mentoring Network that, again, reaches across the entire geographic US, where you can not only have peer-to-peer mentoring, as well as senior mentoring. So I think that all of those are really pivotal, but I just have to go back to something that was discussed earlier, and that just have to continue to search and be proactive. I always tell my mentees, you are your best advocate, right? So the more you do, the more that's returned to you. So don't be afraid to reach out and try some of these other opportunities.
And additionally, don't let failure stop you from starting. So a lot of people think, well, what if I reach out to them and they don't reply? Who cares? Reach out to them anyway. They either will or they won't. Out of the 10 people that you send the email to or send a LinkedIn request, there'll be one person that'll answer and one person that'll reply. And that one person can help guide you to your next goal or your next step. So don't be afraid to start because you think you'll fail.
Thank you so much for those, very important suggestions and advices for sure. Personally, I have taken a lot out of being mentored. As a mentee myself, I did a summer program as a freshman in undergrad. And so that mentorship experience really was very pivotal, and it sort of allowed me to be where I am today. And that one internship that I did, which was part of the summer medical dental education program, really opened the door to my subsequent internships, as well as broaden my sort of network. And so this word network was one thing we mentioned a lot to a lot of our mentees for this Black in Cancer mentorship program. And so part of Black in Cancer is also just establishing that network. We are coming from all over the world. It's so great to see so many people from all over. And establishing this network is very, very important. And so I sort of want to get your take from both of you in terms of how important network has been in sort of where you are right now, and what is the most effective way to really network, especially in this age of internet communication is much quicker, especially now with Zoom. How can you really take advantage of this time period and the era we live in to sort of broaden your network as much as possible?
Yeah, I'll say a lot of people believe that networking is only confined to your specific area. So I've met people who are in cancer and they only want to network with people in cancer. You should branch out. I have mentors who are musicians. I have mentors who are professors, who are in medical affairs, who are engineers in other areas. I have mentors from all over, right? Because the pieces of advice that they give you is non-field specific, right? So they can give you something that can take you to the next level. I would say to get out, especially now during COVID, one of the best tools you can use if you aren't, even if you're in academia or government, is LinkedIn. Having a powerful LinkedIn, really like building it up, putting your best foot forward, because that is a digital, literally our digital resume. So they see that, they have you have all your positions, you have all the things that you've accomplished. You have a profile picture. I think that's important too. So don't have a LinkedIn without a profile picture so people can know who you are. So leading with your best foot forward can really get you some contacts that can be useful in the future. As far as every day, I literally use networking every day, because there's somebody who I can't get into contact with, but then there's one person who can get me around the back door to get me in contact to that person. And so there's always somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And so using network to your advantage will really help in the long run.
Yes, so my response to that would also be that you need to have mentors of all different kinds, right? So it's wonderful to have professional mentors and absolutely essential. But just like anything else, sometimes it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know. And so you can find folks who are definitely more seasoned when you start to think about a job search or you start to think about pivoting. But also, I would say being able to network in this digital platform in terms of giving presentations, right? Of promoting your work as much as possible through not only your lab, but also your PI's connections, through your school connections. Wherever you can get someone to be engaged and help you propagate your message and your research interest is critical. I think in many ways, the pandemic has really opened the doors because everyone is virtual now. So being able to attend conferences, right? Being able to present, being able to connect on the side, the chat, so on and so forth has been really important. And I guess I would also just add personally, it's really important to have folks who share your common experience. Maybe they don't look like you, or they don't have, perhaps, the racial or ethnic diversity, but someone who has been able to master, right, the transition of being able to have a family, right, of being able to balance and transfer from one part of the country to another, right? Like, how do you do those things? How do you negotiate for a job? Right? There are all different types of folks who have been really critical in my career that, again, I never would have thought would have been mentors and have just been outstanding. So don't close the door to opportunity simply because it may not be as familiar to you.
Thank you so much for that. And I think you perfectly answered some of the questions in the chat, about finding mentors virtually, or, tips about finding collaborators. So I think you've covered that well. And also, Nadia, thanks you for sharing the link. So we thank you as well, Dr. Bailey, for sharing them there. Just moving on from that and talking about collaborators, I just wonder if you also, obviously you mentioned before, research is about, you want to do your research, but you still have to have funding for it. And, you working at NCI, I think it's a lot more secure there, but for a lot of people in academia and other places, it is more competitive. I know in the UK for sure, we have a smaller pot, so it's very competitive to get grants and, for your own work as an individual, but also for a group. And I just wonder if you have any examples of funding mechanisms or grants for trainees or early career researchers that you think could be helpful for anyone here who's at that stage in their career.
Yeah, so I would say that, in addition to, I think, the government mechanisms, there are a lot of really great foundations, right? So Coleman Foundation has a variety of new opportunities. Longevity, especially in this new age, if you have a specific cancer focus or cancer type, they're building not only the mentoring and training piece into it, but also with the science piece, or with the population science or behavioral outreach intervention type of work. So again, I think that a thorough search, I see absolutely nothing wrong. I do it. That's how I stay abreast. In addition to, the contacts, is honestly doing an old fashioned Google search, and trying to see what comes up. And so what I would also encourage you to do is, even if the opportunity maybe doesn't look like it's a perfect fit for you, still reach out to the contact person and say, here's what I'm interested in. Do you know of any other opportunities? Right? And just keep on going. And then the other thing too, I would say, is the best way. There were a couple questions about how do you convince somebody that you're qualified, right? That you're fit at this stage to be a collaborator. Work with someone who's more established and senior. Right. And they can definitely help you. External grant review, right? So that you can be as successful as competitive the first time, so that you don't have to, spend or have a big learning curve, that you already have that support system in place when you begin to apply. So those would be my suggestions.
Thank you so much.
So I have a question that, a lot of, my classmates and I have, talk a lot about, a lot of grad students really suffer through, is this idea of sort of believing that, you're not good enough or you're not doing the right thing. And so essentially, can you discuss a little bit about imposter syndrome? Have you gone through it? How do you sort of try to fight the idea that you're not worthy enough, or you don't belong, or you don't have essentially, the skills or the acumen to really be successful, whether it's in grad school or in your current job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I literally battle imposter syndrome all the time. I don't think it's something that it never goes away. It's something that I always be in the shadow. I had imposter syndrome this morning during a meeting. I just hopped on and it just went away. But I think that the main thing is, someone told me a long time ago, a really great mentor, is that you're in the position where you are now because you're supposed to be. So somebody saw something in you to accept you to the program, to accept you to the job. And so that's number one. So believing that a little bit, even though it's really hard sometimes. Number two is, it would be unbelievable to think that people high up have the same feeling. I had a CEO of a major company tell me, I feel this all the time. I'm like, well, why? You're rich, number one. And two, you have all these accomplishments, but they felt the exact same way. So seeing that someone a billion times higher than I am felt imposter syndrome, and that it was so common across all boards, made me realize that, this is probably something that's not going to go away, but there are specific things I can do to kind of help fight that. Number one, you're deserving. Number two, you're in the position right now because you're supposed to be. And number three, there are people who believe in you. There are people who looking up to you right now that you'll never believe. People tell me all the time, oh, you said something and it really inspired me. And I literally was just talking off the top of my head. So you'll be amazed how many people right now that you're inspiring just by being yourself.
So I would maybe have a little bit of a different perspective. I have a feeling that perhaps I'm a little bit older than some of you that are on this call. And I would begin by saying that you just can't take yourself too seriously. So frequently, I always say that a village is missing its idiot because I'm sitting here, right? I never think I have all the answers. We're scientists by nature. Everything is an experiment, and you can't be afraid to fail, right? Your journey is unique to you. So what's important at the end of the day is that you did your best. Even in the best situations, it's not always going to be ideal, right? And so I would like to say that imposter syndrome is fleeting, but it happens in every juncture of, I would say, my day, right? Really showing up as your authentic self. I'd like to be able to say that your appearance doesn't make a difference, that your accent doesn't make a difference. There's always going to be somebody who can find fault and do something better. But then by the same token, nobody can be you. Right? You are unique and you are moving things forward. Maybe perhaps not by being a best practice, but by somebody being able to learn and go along with you and say, okay, if she could make a mistake and do this, really, it's okay. It's okay if you jumble your words, if, you lose power, if you're not prepared, if you don't know the answer to a question. To me, it's a skill that I'm still grappling with over time, right? And so when someone says imposter, what are you being an imposter for, right? Is it you yourself? Is it for your profession? Is it because of your setting? I think we all know how to make accommodations, but being an imposter is, I think, really a loaded word. And I think it has a lot of different facets and really, I think, deserves some self-introspection, because I think it'll be different no matter what the situation, no matter what the company, and just would want folks to really dive into that, into, what that really translates. And it's really interesting that we're having this conversation now. I'm a member of minority research for AACR, and there was a whole forum, especially for new investigators, people who are trying to reach that, elusive R01 or get that first faculty job, especially in the face of structural racism, right? In the current confines of society and the implications that are associated with that. And so it's something that is tied to a variety of other elements. And I think it's really important to really know your environment. We've talked a lot about collaborators and mentorship, but you also need to have that infrastructure. You need to have that encouragement at those junctures of your career. So I would encourage you to really look and see what the commitment is of your institution to you, as well as your PI, so on and so forth, so that, you don't have to experience imposter syndrome or deal with it on a continual basis, because there are other environments that are more supportive, right? That have the resources in place, ways that you can address that. So I feel very passionately about that. I'm sorry I went on, but really, I would encourage all of you to join Minorities in Cancer Research if you can, because again, that's a foundation that reaches across premier science focused on cancer. And there's some amazing people there. Dr. Sonia Springfield, Dr. John Carpton, several people who have really been pioneers in paving the way for diversity and underrepresented training opportunities.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Bailey. I can agree with the chat to say that we're all very inspired and encouraged right now. It was really amazing, because I agree with, even Mamadou posing the question. I am someone who also thought, like, how am I here? How am I doing this work? So I kind of like how you spin that on the head and kind of make us look at it from a different perspective. So thank you so much. So to both of our speakers as well, just piggybacking off of, imposter syndrome, just wanted to ask you if you had any particular challenges that you faced in your research, one as being just conducting research in general, or being a Black cancer researcher in particular, and how you would have overcome that in your journey.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So at a major conference, we have the poster sessions, hundreds of posters, and you have, people at every poster, and you have a judge coming by to kind of look at the poster, ask you questions. In this particular instance, the person came by and they were grilling me and only me. And I couldn't figure out why are they asking me? They skipped 5 posters and came straight to me. And it was because I don't know what it was because. In my head, I'm like, well, maybe it's because I'm the only person of color on this entire row. And I just let it pass, but then it just kept happening throughout the entire session. And so what I realized is that sometimes people would second guess your intelligence based on either your background, what school you went to, tons of things. But I think it's important to understand that you can't give anyone the power to make you feel inadequate. So I'm gonna give you this piece of knowledge. You know just as much as everyone else in the room, right? But there'll be people who challenge you. And that's not because of you. That's not because of where you're from. It's because of something within that person that they are battling themselves, right? And so don't ever let anybody have that power over you, and that know that you're there because you're supposed to be there, and that you know your stuff. You wouldn't be at a conference. They wouldn't select your poster. They didn't think that, you knew what was going on.
Yeah, so I think based on my experience, it has been somewhat challenging, right? To be able to, the way I frame it is have the minority speak for the majority. Yes, I might be African-American, right? And I might be a scientist and I might have expertise here, but it's just my work, right? That's one perspective, right? It's not meant to be reflective for a larger population. And so I think that being able to know that, again, you do have the expertise and that you are learning, and those experiences only seek to strengthen you, right? Because a well-answered question is just that, right? Regardless of what the packaging or the setting is. And I think being able to encounter that on a regular basis makes you more adept at doing that. And then the other thing too, I will say is there are some people who, haters are going to hate, right? There are going to be some people who are going to come for you, right? There are going to be people who try to trip you up. And, your success is really, in my mind, it speaks for itself. So let them come, right? The more engagement that you can have, the more opportunity, and the way you handle that, right? Both professionally and personally, I think speaks volumes. And you really would, I think, as your journey increases or continues, I think you really will be surprised at just how strong you are and how amazing you are. And you don't ever have to say anything or do anything outside of what you would normally do to have that be evident.
Yeah, and I'll say, piggybacking off of Dr. Bailey, like as you go through, some of those things won't even affect you anymore. In graduate school, if someone told me that my data looked weird, I was shut down for like a whole day, shut the lab. I'm not replying to any emails. But now I take it as, okay, well, I can do better next time. Okay, well, this is great. I'm going to happy hour because it wasn't a big deal. So like as time goes on, these things will become so minute in how they make you feel that they only are be used to empower you. So.
Just a quick anecdote. This sort of reminded me, I did a summer program at the University of Michigan, and I went to New Jersey City University, which, you know, is not a super well-known school or ranked. And I remember one particular participant asked me, "Oh, what school do you go to?" And I told them, and it was funny because this was so petty. The next day, they like looked up my school ranking, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're probably not going to get into a good school." And it was funny. I was like, well, you know, it's interesting. We're in the same program though. So somehow I was good enough to get into this program just as you. So it sort of reminded me of this. And really just that, like Dr. Bailey said, there are haters out there, and, you know, it's knowing yourself and knowing your, knowing your worth, and really just driving on, you know, and continuing on, and really focusing on the positives. So that being said, just one last question, you know, if you were to, to mentor yourself, essentially, you know, what would you tell you? What is one piece of advice or wisdom you would impart on yourself, whether it's, you know, through undergrad or whether you're a graduate student or whether, you know, your current, you know, in terms of your current career, what is a piece of advice you would give yourself looking back?
I would say that it's going to be okay and just keep going. As a graduate student and even as a postdoc, some things happened and it was the end of the world for me. But the next day was okay. But at that moment in time, it didn't feel like it was going to be okay. And so if I could just go back and whisper to my graduate school self that, you know what, these experiments didn't work and you're gonna get ate up in a lab meeting, that's fine. But you're gonna be at your dream job, you know, in a couple of years. So just hang in there. So that's what I would tell myself.
Gosh, I think it's something that I still have to tell myself. And that's not necessarily so much that it's going to be okay for me, but that it's okay to admit failure, that it's okay to make mistakes. And it's not necessarily how big or how small, but it's what you learn and how you come back. And not only for yourself, but also for the team around you, right? I wouldn't be sitting here if somebody hadn't extended that grace to me, right? If somebody hadn't said, okay, we have to call a spade, you made a mistake, right? Like this wasn't part of the journey, but here's how we're going to get back on track. And so the only thing that we can be certain of is change. And I would say maybe take a deep breath and don't carry the anxiety from yesterday into today, because each day is going to have another situation. And to Dr. Henderson's point, you do have to tell yourself it's okay. I almost feel like that's a coping mechanism to be able to keep going, but just to be able to really enjoy the journey and recognize that it is pivotal for what you need to know, for what you need to grow. So if it was easy, a lot of people wouldn't be doing it, right? But you have the opportunity and you have the skills. And so hone them and just be the best that you can be. That's what I'd say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I like that, the best that you can be. I think those are the last questions from us as moderators, but if you as the audience have any other questions that you'd like to ask yourself or put in the chat, please feel free to do so now. I did see that there was one earlier that I'll go back to. And Sewe asked, how important do you think obtaining a PhD is in terms of career prospects within the cancer field? Do you think you would have been able to be where you both are today without first obtaining a PhD? So I'll open it to either one of you or both to answer that question.
I would say it depends on what you want to do. I think you have to figure out, well, I guess most of us are still trying to figure out what we want to do. But like just that initial step is sometimes you don't need a PhD to do certain things. I know people who work in the industry, in labs, they don't have PhDs, they're principal scientists. I know people who are doing the same job that I'm doing and they don't have PhDs, they have bachelors or medical professionals. So no, you don't necessarily need a PhD to work in cancer. I would say really research and reach out to people who have potential careers that you're interested in, looking at their career paths and seeing how their PhD played a part in their journey.
Yeah, so I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Henderson, right? So it takes a village. It takes all different kinds of people to play different roles, right? Like not everybody can be CEO, right? Like, and sometimes I find that the most impactful people don't have to, don't have those degrees. But I would say that for, I guess, my career path and for, I think a lot of careers where leadership or senior executive positions are sought, you do need to have a PhD, I think more for credibility than anything else. Because I would say that sometimes there is the question, right, of are you credentialed enough? Are you knowledgeable enough? And so when folks see those little letters behind your name, then they can kind of check the box, right? So again, it depends on your career path, but that's what I would say.
Yeah, I would say that like credibility, that's a big point. Our lab manager, my postdoc, knew how to do everything. And she taught me things, but she didn't have a PhD. So like Dr. Bailey said, like sometimes it's just for you to get into the door.
All right, I see a question. Dato, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, or do you want me to read it? Okay.
Oh, hi. I don't know if I'm audible enough.
Yep,
Also,
we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Also, there's like background music behind me because I live with a couple of friends of mine. So sorry about that. They're probably listening to house music. So I'm South African. I'm currently enrolled with the University of Cape Town. And my question is, well, I'll just read it out in the chat. I had said that, good day, everyone. For a very long time, I've been asking myself if ever the whole work-life balance truly exists. So more so when you're an academic. I've often found that throughout my entire academic career, postgrad to be specific, I've discovered that I always plan my life around my studies. I don't know if that's the case with everyone, but I've found that for myself. And that obviously means less time spent with family and friends and loved ones. It broke me at some point because most importantly, I lost myself. But I'm working on it though. So is it true? And also thank you in advance for sharing your inputs.
That's difficult to, I had a mentor who told me there's really no such thing as work-life balance. Something's always going to happen. But I'll tell you the other analogy she told me. She says life is like juggling, right? So imagine you're juggling balls. You got 5 balls in there. And the object is to keep all the balls in the air. That's work, that's life, that's family, that's walking your dog, going to the gym. All these balls have to stay in the air. But there's going to come a time where you have to take a ball down and put it out of rotation. And then, so now you can't go to the gym today because you're getting to go to the lab. So now you have to pick up another ball and put it in a rotation. And so the thing about it is you really have to prioritize what's most important in your life to keep the specific balls in the air. Sometimes you may have to put down, I can't go out to eat today because I have to run PCR today. I can't do that. But tomorrow I can do that. So being able to prioritize things. Some people, it's important to understand that some people do that better than others. I had friends who were traveling everywhere during the PhD. I'm like, how y'all doing this? And I'm in lab. I don't know how y'all doing this. I can't do that. But apparently people have different ways of strategizing and prioritizing things. And so I wasn't good at that in graduate school. And so when I got into my postdoc, when I got into my current field, I said, you know what, I'm putting myself first. And then the job and stuff can come after. And so I think it takes some personal discovery to kind of figure out how you want to do this because it differs from everyone.
So I'm not going to say that I disagree, but I am a mommy. Well, yes, I am a mommy of 3 boys and I'm married to my husband for 19 years. And I think about the fact that I had to lay the foundation, right? Like I had to go through a certain journey. I had to pay my dues. I had to become credentialed. And that was easier when it was just me. And I do agree that there's sacrifice, but I believe that those who know and love me understand that. And on a regular basis, Lord knows that I don't have like the whole work-life balance thing figured out. But each day is a new opportunity, right? And so very similar to what Dr. Henderson said, if something slips, then you have to go back and course correct, right? But I think when you consider what your career looks like, right? So for those who are trying to find jobs, so on and so forth, how much of a commitment of you is required in that role, right? That's the reason why I'm saying not academia is for everybody, right? Not practicing medicine is for everybody. You might want to find something that, again, gives you more of that balance and that self-awareness. And so again, talking to mentors and trying some things, right? Like if you think you want to practice medicine, pretend like you're a resident for 6 weeks and see how that works for you, right? When you're on call 12, 14 hours a day, right? Where, I mean, they're just things that come with the territory, and you have to be willing to accept that, to go down that path. So I just think being honest with yourself. But as far as work-life balance, I don't know what that is either.
Yeah, it's just kind of like hit or miss sometimes, but I think you make time for what's important. You just have fun. Living life is really hard to do sometimes, but I think you just have to kind of be like, you know what, I'm going to book this trip, and those sales can wait until I get back. I'll thaw out a new one when I get back. So sometimes you just have to do it, and sometimes it doesn't work. But like I said, work-life balance it's a constant figuring that out.
Thank you to our panelists. We have 1 minute left, so I'll just add one more question that's in the chat, and then we can close. So Jira is also from the NCI, and she says structural racism is very prevalent in academic and non-academic careers. It is often subtle, but sometimes overt. How do you manage your stress/mental health while dealing with these issues in the work environment?
So I guess the question I have is, while dealing with these issues in the work environment, because I do believe that there is time and place for everything. And dealing with it in the moment is much different than dealing with it subsequently after you've had an opportunity to reflect, perhaps, and decompress. And so, again, I think that knowing when to speak up, how to speak up, and why are key for managing the structural racism aspect of it. And then outside of that, I have other things, but I want to make sure Dr. Henderson has a chance to respond.
No, I definitely agree. There's a time and place for everything. I remember whenever the George Floyd incident happened last year, nobody could figure out why I didn't want to come to lab. I didn't want to do anything. It was just because it kept happening back to back. It wasn't until my advisor actually asked me what was wrong, and I kind of just talked to her about it. But it wasn't going to be right for me to just not come in without an explanation or not give them what was going on with me. So there's a time and place for everything. You can communicate these things. Some people won't care, and a lot of people won't understand. They won't get it. And so it's important to surround yourself and reach out to people in your institution who look like you. I had a postdoc across the hall. We were only two out of the entire floor was Black people. And so we kind of stuck together. My lab mate was a Black girl as well. And so we stuck together and we kind of supported each other. But you need to find that support system, and wherever you are, if that's out in the real world, if that's at your job, at your school, you need people around you who have that same experience culturally, so they can get you. Because sometimes you just can't turn up at the school. You have to kind of go home and kind of reflect what Dr. Bailey said.
All right. This is the sad part where we start closing things. Thank you again to our phenomenal speakers, Dr. Bailey and Dr. Henderson. You have personally left me and perhaps us in general feeling empowered to reflect on your experiences and how it may inform our very own experiences. So thank you again for that. And thank you all as well to the many of you who have taken the time to tune in, listen, and engage. I think I speak for Black in Cancer when I say we appreciate you. We hope you continue to with us. Many of to come. Shut off.
Yeah, so I just want to thank our panelists again. I mean, I think I share the sentiment of everybody here who can say there were so many gems that were dropped tonight, so many gems. And for me personally, and I know for Mamadou as well, I think that it was very inspirational to hear your stories and just the advice that you can give people, at this stage in your career, especially for people like us who are still kind of going through the nitty-gritty minion phase of it all. So thank you so much. And we also would like everyone on the chat, we thank you for coming to this first talk in Black in Cancer Week. And we encourage you to join again tomorrow, where we'll be talking about evading myths when it comes to COVID-19 and cancer. So thank you all again, and have a nice evening for those on the European side, and a nice afternoon for those of you on the North American side. And we'll see you all again tomorrow, hopefully. Thank you so much.